Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Eloisa Ramos, and we are here to study the text of A Course in Miracles. And I'm here with my friend Connie. Hi, Connie.
Hi.
And my friend Teresa. Hi,
Hello.
Teresa. And my daughter Sonia.
Hi.
Okay, and today we are going to do chapter 4, The Illusions of the Ego. And we're working on section 7. Is that right? Yeah, section 7. Oops, here it is. Creation and communication. And that's the last section in chapter 4 here. Okay, number 1, paragraph 1. It is clear that while the content of any particular ego illusion does not matter, its correction is more helpful in a specific context. Ego illusions are quite specific, although the mind is naturally abstract. Part of the mind becomes concrete, however, when it splits. The concrete part believes in the ego because the ego depends on the concrete. The ego is the part of the mind that believes your existence is defined by separation. Okay, so it's abstract. Let's see if we can kind of look at it sentence by sentence. Okay, it is clear that while the content of any particular ego illusion does not matter, okay, its correction is more helpful in a specific context. Okay. So the course distinguishes between content and symbol. So here it's using the word content. Okay. So the content, the meaning of any particular illusion. Okay, the meaning itself does not matter. Okay, the ego would say otherwise. Okay, the ego makes specific illusions or fantasies very important to it. Okay, but it's telling us that, you know, that's not where you need to focus here. That's not really what matters. Its correction is more, but its correction is more helpful in a specific context. So what this is saying to me is that if I want to release my fantasies, my ego illusions, okay, I start with a specific problem. So I start with a specific situation. I start with something that shows up in my life in a specific context. That's a problem for me. And that's the way EFT, the emotional freedom techniques, work too. So we start with the specific problem, and then we work at going into the meaning of that to release it. So for the correction, which is the healing of the misperception, okay, it's saying that it's more helpful if you start with specifics, with what actually is showing up in your everyday experience that you are finding, you know, fearful, or or that you're finding that it's a block to forgiveness, that it's something that is you struggle with, something that's emotionally upsetting. So that's what we start with. So 2, ego illusions are quite specific, and that's what I was talking about. Okay, so we each have our own specific problems, and they're not they're unique to us because of the way that we are looking at them and the meaning, the very specific meaning that we're giving to them, because it's all based on our past experiences and judgments and upbringing and all of that. Does that make sense so far? Yeah. Okay. So, but the mind, and this is, you know, not something that we tend to believe, but it's saying that the mind is naturally abstract. Okay. So it's not talking really about the ego, the quote unquote ego mind, because ego illusions are quite specific. It's talking about about our higher mind, the one that can perceive truly in alignment with truth, absolute truth. So part of the mind, so this is what it's saying. So our mind, when it's whole, is naturally abstract. And then part of the mind becomes concrete, however, when it splits. So when we shift and choose to perceive rather than to know, we're splitting the mind, and part of it becomes concrete. So what this is saying to me is that our mind identifies with something concrete, like our body, like, like my pet, like I can identify with my children, I can identify with something that is physical, very concrete. I can identify with my cell phone, and protect it from breaking and all of that, losing my data and all of that. So when we identify with an object, the mind seems to become very concrete. Okay. And it calls it a split because it's not, the mind doesn't really transform itself. Okay. It's not like, it's not magic. We may think it's magic, kind of like the frog turns into a prince or a prince turns into, but when you think of the identification with the concrete, you can think of if you were to win this beautiful new car in a lottery or something, and they just delivered it, and you go in to look at it, and it's got all these, maybe it has a leather interior and you can smell the leather. Maybe it has, all these wonderful, maybe it can self-drive, who knows? It's got all these amazing things. Okay. So you take it out for a drive and you're completely, what's the word? In love with it. Okay. So you are identified with it, oh yeah, I feel so good driving this car, whatever. And you park, and then as you are about to get out, someone next to you gets out of their car and their door, hits the side of your car. Not really hard, but you felt it. Okay. You literally believe that it hit you. So you're like, you react to it as if it hit you. Okay. That's what it means that the mind becomes concrete, because you almost take on the car as if it was an extension of yourself. And so now when that door dings your car, it's as if it was dinging you, your body. So it's an extension of your body. So number 4, the concrete part believes in the ego. Okay, because the ego depends on the concrete, because the ego is a belief in separation. So there's this, there's a reflection there of that split. So now there's a concrete part, okay, that is, it's not really the car that's believing in the ego, right? It's the ego identified with the car that then believes in itself as an ego. Okay, because the ego itself depends on that object, that concrete object, to perceive separation. Okay, so number 5, the ego is a part of the mind that believes that your existence is defined by separation. Okay, because the ego thinks that what we are is bodies. Okay, and so it believes that our existence is defined by being a separate object from another object. So the perception of separation tells it that what we are as a self created by God is just a body, okay, which is not true. But because the ego is a belief in separation, it has to perceive separation. That's what beliefs do. beliefs filter, or you could say project what we believe onto the world to perceive objects that are separate. Okay. Any questions there? No? Okay. Number 2.
Everything the ego perceives is a separate whole, without the relationships that imply being. The ego is thus against communication, except insofar as it is utilized to establish separateness rather than to abolish it. The communication system of the ego is based on its own thought system, as is everything else it dictates. Its communication is controlled by its need to protect itself, and it will disrupt communication when it experiences threat. This disruption is a reaction to a specific person or persons. The specificity of the ego's thinking, then, results in spurious generalization, which is really not abstract at all. It merely responds in certain specific ways to everything it perceives as related.
Okay. Okay. Anything there, Sonia, that stands out for you?
Just line 5, but I think I need more like clarification.
Okay. This disruption is a reaction to, okay. All right. So let's just kind of look at it line by line. Everything the ego perceives is a separate whole without the relationships that imply being. Okay. So when the ego perceives, it perceives as a subject perceiving an object. So when it perceives the object, it thinks that's a separate whole, right? So it thinks, okay, well, yeah, here's the object, here's my cell phone, and the cell phone is in and of itself a whole separate thing. Okay, so when I look at someone else, I think of someone else, okay, well, there's Sonia, okay, and she's this whole separate body self with a private mind, okay, independent from me. So it's without the relationships that imply being. Okay, so the relationships that imply being is that it is that the one that when we recognize that everything is part of being, then it's all connected, it's all one self. So there's no independent thing. This doesn't just act on its own. I have to work with it. We made that. I made it. The everything in the world is does not exist without being in relationship to my mind, giving it meaning. So it's not separate, and it does not have its own meaning in and of itself. It's all connected to my mind. So the ego is thus against communication. Okay, so true communication happens at the mind level, but not for the ego, because the ego believes that individuals have private minds and that they can what's the word, protect their thoughts, and that's why we're really into like our protecting our identity, our driver's license, social security number, all of that, our birth date, all of that information that would identify us as a unique whole separate self. Okay, so so the ego utilizes, so it's against communication insofar it is utilized to establish separateness rather than to abolish it. So So the belief in separation protects itself. So it protects the idea of separation. So the communication system of the ego is based on its own thought system, as is everything else it dictates. So it's going to promote perceiving separation because that maintains the belief in separation in our mind to be true. Okay. So it's not going to want to perceive communication at the level of one mind. That would mean that there's no separation between minds. Okay. So its communication is controlled by its need to protect itself. So that's all it's doing. So it will disrupt communication when it experiences threat. So to the ego, when we come close to having this experience of say of recognizing that we are one mind, of recognizing that we're all the same, though it will try to protect its own self, that belief, by disrupting that communication. So it will become upset over something. So and it usually happens like in relationships. Okay, so for example, I I went to pick up some fast food last night, and I didn't check inside the bag. And then when I got home, well, doggone it, it was the wrong order. We got like 3 orders of French fries. So I had to go back. Uh, I didn't really want to go back, but the food wasn't for me. So I went back. And I told them, and they said, "Okay, yes, your chicken sandwiches are here." So they went ahead and they took care of the problem. So okay, um, so in that situation, I could have been really upset. Okay, because I could have said, "Oh, doggone it, I had to waste my time. I had to make 2 trips, and all of that." But but actually, when they gave me the bag, I had communication going in my mind that said check the bag, and I didn't listen to it. Okay, so 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 I can recognize that the the disruption that was disrupted. Even though I was aware that the communication was there, I didn't listen to it. So what the ego will try to do is break the communication that we have with what the course calls the voice for God, Holy Spirit. And then that's when we have errors. So we have errors, and that's when we become all upset. So let's see where oh so right here, number 4, its communication is controlled by its need to protect itself, and it will disrupt communication when it experiences a threat. Okay, so the need to protect itself would be projecting blame. So if I had gone into those doggone it, dumb, so and so and so, they can't get anything right, da, 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 da. Okay, so I'm focusing on the error. And so that's what the ego does, is it focuses on the error as if my mind had nothing to do with it. Okay, so it would disrupt communication by choosing the grievance rather than the forgiveness, which, because the forgiveness would recognize that I did it to myself, that experience was, I called that into my life. Okay, so that disruption is a reaction to a specific person or persons. So that's what the disruption would have been. Okay, so even though I had that, ego saying, doggone it, you don't want to go back, it's a waste of your time. Da, 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 da. Okay, I didn't go there. I just said, okay, fine, let's go, and then they gave us some extra desserts and stuff. And I said, thank you. So, it's no big deal unless we make it a big deal. And the ego is going to want to make it into a big deal. It's going to focus on the error and use that as a justification for attacking, okay, judging, being upset, which is what disrupts communication. Okay. So the specificity of the ego's thinking then results in spurious generalization, which is really not abstract at all. Okay, so if I would have been all upset and I would have said, oh, doggone it, those fast food workers, they're all just whatever. If I would have just made a blank judgment, like they never get anything right. Okay, if I start using the word like never, or they always, or why does this always happen to me? So that's what the ego does. It makes spurious generalizations, okay, which are not abstract at all. Okay, they're just like, yeah, this has happened to me once or twice, but now it's always, it's forever. So, yeah, and so it merely responds in certain specific ways to everything it perceives as related. So the reaction becomes almost rehearsed after a while. So if it's happened 2 or 3 times, it's almost like, the third time, your mind is already kind of trained on how to react. So you just react unconsciously that way. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anything there? Okay, number 3.
In contrast, spirit reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else, nor does it make any attempt to establish what is true. It knows that what is true is everything that God created. It is in complete and direct communication with every aspect of creation because it is in complete and direct communication with its creator. This communication is the will of God. Creation and communication are synonymous. God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, thus establishing it forever as a channel for the reception of his mind and will. Since only beings of a like order can truly communicate, his creations naturally communicate with him and like him. This communication is perfectly abstract since its quality is universal in application and not subject to any judgment, any exception, or any alteration. God created you by this and for this. The mind can distort its function, but it cannot endow itself with functions it was not given. That is why the mind cannot totally lose the ability to communicate, even though it may refuse to utilize it on behalf of being.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so anything there, Connie? What's it saying to you?
Well, gosh, that it spells it out really clearly that I can't put it into words, but it just says, that our mind is forever established by the creator, and we cannot, judge or it just is.
Mm-hmm.
It can distort its function, but it cannot, give it things that it was not truly given. So God has given us everything
Mm-hmm.
and the true mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes. So So in the first line, paragraph 3, it says, in contrast, spirit reacts in the same way to everything it knows is true and does not respond at all to anything else. So spirit does not, spirit only sees innocence, which is true, and therefore anything else would be an error. Okay, and it does not see error. That's why it only sees innocence. So somewhere else it says that that vision can only see innocence because evil does not, because it cannot see evil, and therefore evil does not exist. So the so we can take the idea of judgment, right? In line 9, this communication is perfectly abstract since its qualities are universal in application. So spirit knows our true nature as being like God's true nature. Okay. And so and so it's not, it does not, that nature does not change. That true essence of what we are, which is being, does not change and is not subject to any judgment, any exception or any alteration. And that's the main underlying belief in believing in separation, is that we have altered ourselves, that we are no longer the way that we were created. And therefore we believe that our judgment somehow has power to make what is innocent into guilty. And that's why we project blame. And the projection is what is a distortion of our function, which is to create like God and extend love, extend communication. And so we distort our function when we don't give love, when instead we withhold love. We blame and we attack and we, and we don't recognize people's true being as holy and innocent, because we're focusing on the doing of the error, on the quote unquote sin. And so number 6 says creation and communication are synonymous. And and it also says that, let's see, that God created every mind by communicating his mind to it, and thus establishing it forever as a channel for the perception of his mind and will. So the mind, the mind that is whole and recognizes that a belief in separation never happened, which means that the mind has accepted the atonement, would be a complete channel for receiving the communication directly from God, which would mean that the Holy Spirit would no longer be needed as the link to communication, because the mind will have reestablished direct communication with God. So let's see. This communication is the will of God. So the ego is not the will of God. The belief in separation is not in alignment with the will of God, and that's why it's not real. Okay, because only the will of God is truth and therefore reality. Okay, so any questions with that? Okay. Okay, number 4.
Existence as well as being rests on communication. Existence, however, is specific in how, what, and with whom communication is judged to be worth undertaking. Being is completely without these distinctions. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. To whatever extent you permit this state to be curtailed, you are limiting your sense of your own reality, which becomes total only by recognizing all reality in the glorious context of its real relationship to you. This is your reality. Do not desecrate it or recoil from it. It is your real home, your real temple, and your real self.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. What is it saying, Teresa? Anything
I
there?
think sentence number 4 speaks to
Mhm.
what I see in it. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. So from my point of view, it's saying that we're always in communication with God,
Yes. And so,
always
mhm,
a one, a part of everything, always one. It's our real home.
mhm, mhm. Yeah. So when you think about, let's see, we were talking about this last week about how comfortable you feel around people you've never met, and how it is that some people can feel very, very comfortable and some people can feel really uncomfortable. And so this is talking, a little bit to that because it's distinguishing the idea of existence and being. Okay, so um, the first line, existence as well as being rests on communication. Existence, however, is specific in how and what and with whom communication is judged to be worth undertaking. So if we go into a large gathering, people we don't know, maybe we know some people, maybe, others we've never met, okay, then the existence of a separate self as an ego body identity, okay, would be deciding, okay, who do I want to go talk to? Who do I want to go meet? Who is going to be someone that I want to be connected to? Who is someone that I want to be seen with? Who is someone I would never want to be seen with? So it's being very specific as to how, what, and with who communication is going to be worth my time to undertake. Do you see what I'm saying? So,
Mhm.
so it will pick and choose its quote unquote friends, and it will pick and choose its so-called enemies. Okay, but being is completely without these distinctions. Okay, so being is just open to everyone, because everyone is the same. It's part of being. And so it's not deciding, it's not limiting who it wants to be in contact with or who it wants to listen to and not listen to. It's just completely open to all of creation and to the experience of the um, of the recognition that we are already, even without saying a word, we are already in communication, as one mind. Um, so yeah, so that's number 4. It is a state in which the mind is in communication with everything that is real. So it bypasses the perception of the separate body, how the person's dressed, what nationality they are, what color of skin they are, what gender they are, what sexual orientation they are, because none of that is being. So it does not look at any differences. It doesn't see any differences. Okay, so and number 8, it is your real home, your real temple, and your real self. So that's the self with the capital S, the one self, the being. And so you're going to feel completely at home wherever you go, because that is your real home. You are not separate from your real home, which is a love that is without exception, without exclusion, without separation. So, yeah. Okay, number 5. So God, who encompasses all being, created beings who have everything individually, but who want to share it to increase their joy. Nothing real can be increased except by sharing. That is why God created you. Divine abstraction takes joy in sharing. That is what creation means. Quote unquote how, quote unquote what, and quote unquote to whom are irrelevant. Because real creation gives everything, since it can create only like itself. Remember that in the kingdom, there is no difference between having and being, as there is in existence. In the state of being, the mind gives everything always. Okay, so here it uses the word kingdom. Okay, so the word kingdom is when we are in a state of being, and the mind is not perceiving separation. So, and in that state, we are the kingdom of God. We are all part of the kingdom of God as one creation. And in that, and that's at the level of the mind. So at that state, there is no difference between having and being, as there is at the level of physical ego separate existence. Because existence is a temporary, it's a temporary thing. Things come and go in existence. But in the kingdom, there's just eternity. And so there's no separation. And so everything shares in everything. So so even though up here in the first line, it says God who, yeah.
That's very tricky to me.
Is it? Well, God who encompasses all being, created beings who have everything individually.
Individually.
Yes. So remember that we are still having an experience of a world that is physical, that is that perceives separation, that perceives individuals, that perceives bodies. so because we are still in this experience where we are perceived as an individual. Okay.
Yeah, but it makes it sound as though, yeah.
Yes, but when it says that we have everything individually, it's not talking about physical things. It's talking about the inheritance of the kingdom of God. Okay. And what is the inheritance of the kingdom of God? Well, it's not like a mansion with, $300 million. Okay, because that's illusion.
No,
So,
of course, but
yes.
the individually part just throws me.
Okay, so what he's trying to communicate is that the idea of the individual containing the whole. So even though we can walk the earth seemingly an individual, okay, in appearance, the truth is we have not left our source, and we are still everything and one with our source and with each other. Okay, so I I, see the I,
Mhm.
the idea of an I is the idea of an individual. So when I use language, I have to use language that identifies me as an individual, because that's the way we communicate in the world. So in order to use language to try to communicate what is not symbolic, but what is, eternal and doesn't exclude anything, I still have to use words that imply individuality. So if I say, yes, I have an experience of being and having everything. Okay. It still seems to be in my individual experience, right? Because you can
Mhm.
say, oh, well, I've had that very rarely, but I'm not having that now. Or, I can have that when I'm walking in nature or something. So, something like that. So what makes it individual is that we experience it in consciousness as if we were a separate self,
Right, right, right,
which we're not.
right.
So we can experience no separation in the mind of consciousness, which seems to be a separate self.
Mhm.
Yeah.
No, I understand the truth of all of that, but it just seems like that line is a little bit, I don't know, muddled.
Yes, because it's combining everything with individuality, with
Mhm.
specific.
Yeah.
Seems to be combining the abstract everything with the
Mhm.
specific individual.
Mhm.
Yeah, but the course, has to try to communicate these ideas to us who come from the place of believing we are an individual. So how's it going to bridge that gap? The Holy Spirit can see that that we're not an individual, and yet it does communicate with us at that level, so we can understand. It's so,
Okay, I
yeah,
forgot that part. Okay.
yeah. Okay, so let's see. Is it your turn, Sonia?
Yeah. Mhm. 6. The Bible repeatedly states that you should praise God. This hardly means that you should tell him how wonderful he is. He has no ego with which to accept such praise, and no perception with which to judge it. But unless you take your part in the creation, his joy is not complete because yours is incomplete. And this he does know. He knows it in his own being and its experience of his son's experience. The constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels are closed, and he is lonely when the minds he created do not communicate fully with him.
Mhm. Yeah, so anything there, Sonia?
Actually, the first two lines, I always wondered because I actually went to a friend's like church, and part of the church's like religion and stuff, they're all about like praising God, and stuff. Like they would have like grand. I don't really remember all of it, but I was always confused by that, like why people would praise uh God, but that makes a lot of I think it makes more sense how the Bible kind of confused that because the God doesn't have an ego to accept the praise. So I guess I was just always confused
Mhm.
why those certain religions like did that. So
Yes. So, a lot of religions, and I mean, I grew up Catholic, so we are taught to look at God as if God is like us rather than the other way around. So we kind of give God almost personal traits, you know. um, and so that's a distortion. So we're distorting, you know, by using the standard for reality to be us as an ego. We tend to judge, you know, God, that is beyond ego, that's not ego, it's not illusion. We tend to want to look at God in the same way as we see ourselves. So and we're used to using judgment to what's the word, almost in a magical way, to say, you know, if I judge it so and I say it's so, then it is so, you know, almost in a way. It's almost, I want to say it's almost in a way of putting myself into a trance to believe my own thinking is true.
Mhm.
and therefore not question it at all, you know.
Yeah.
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 So yeah. So
Boy, this is a beautiful paragraph, you
mhm,
know, unless you take your part in it, God's joy is not complete because yours is incomplete.
mhm,
And
mhm,
this he does know.
mhm,
And that's just, wow. That
mhm.
is total communion.
Yes, that's
Mm,
right. So there's no separation, right?
mhm.
And he
Just,
knows it is in his own being,
mm,
and its experience of his son's experience. So we cannot be happy unless we take our part in the creation, which is sharing love, um, and you know, practicing and fulfilling our function, which is the practice of forgiveness, which is the demonstration of love. um, because see, number 7, the constant going out of his love is blocked when his channels
mhm,
are closed.
mm,
So God is just love, and he wants to just love us, and he wants to be able to, and that's our true nature. And so when we block that and we choose the grievance, we are choosing to block that love, that communication, and to not extend that. Um, and um, so we will be experiencing loneliness and unhappiness, um, because we are cutting off that communication. Not that the communication is not there, the communication is always there, but if we close the mind to it, then we isolate ourselves and then so that we can then perceive ourselves to be a separate individual ego body self. Um, and we block the communication to the Holy Spirit, which is our link to God, the voice for God. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Number 7.
God has kept your kingdom for you, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it with your whole mind. Revelation is not enough because it is only communication from God. God does not need revelation returned to him, which would clearly be impossible, but he does want it brought to others. This cannot be done with the actual revelation. Its content cannot be expressed because it is intensely personal to the mind that receives it. It can, however, be returned by that mind to other minds through the attitudes the knowledge from the revelation brings.
Oh, okay.
Ooh, I will let you
Yeah, so
This-
I think this last part, sentence 4 and 5, I think it's actually clarifying, Connie, the question you had up here about in paragraph 5 about
Mhm,
created beings who have everything individually,
mhm.
because what he's saying here, let's see. So God has kept your kingdom for you, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it with your whole mind. So that means to release the split. And up here, we were talking about the split here. Let me see. Oh, here it is. Paragraph 1, sentence 3. Part of the mind becomes concrete when it splits. So anytime we identify with anything of the world of matter that's concrete, okay, we split the mind. And once we split the mind then is blocks communication from God. So so right here, God has kept your kingdom, but he cannot share his joy with you until you know it with your whole mind. So the identification with our ego or our body is going to block that communication because it's going to split the mind. And we can only know the joy that God brings to us with a whole mind. So, okay, and so this idea here is revelation is not enough because it only communicates from God. So God gives everything to us individually. So that's the communication, the revelation of everything. Okay. But the revelation, but because other minds block that revelation, okay, he cannot bring it to others. So he can only bring it to those minds that do not split themselves by identifying with the ego or the body. It's the belief in separation. Okay. And therefore he can only communicate everything to us individually in that sense. Okay, because that mind has opened up to receive that. Okay, but now see number 4, let's see, because this experience is intensely personal, okay, the revelation itself cannot be shared. Its contents cannot be expressed because it's intensely personal to the mind that receives it. However, it can be returned by that mind to other minds through the attitudes the knowledge from the revelation brings. Okay, so for example, Buddha or Jesus, okay, they were teachers, but in a lot of their teaching was in words or story or whatever, but I would say that the greatest impact was really part of their attitude, and um, their being, their sense of how they were in the world, uh, which was their um, their reflection of the knowledge that they received through revelation, right? So they're Jesus turning the other cheek. I mean, that attitude, where is that attitude going to come from? Well, that's going to have a big impact on the world where everybody is like, no way, I'm not turning the other cheek. Okay. But here's someone that was able to do it, even suffering on the cross. He didn't go into blame and guilt. He said, forgive them for they don't know what they're doing. I'm not judging them. I'm not blaming them, you know. So so the attitude of the life that we live is how we can share that the intensely personal experience of revelation. So the content cannot be expressed because it's intensely personal, but it can be returned by that mind to other minds through the attitudes the knowledge from the revelation brings. Yeah. So it's one thing to understand the teachings of Jesus Christ, but it's another to practice them like he did. Okay. It's the same thing with the course. It's one thing to read the text and say, oh yeah, I remember what it says and be able to quote from it. But it's another one to practice the daily lessons, in our everyday life. So, okay. Okay, so anything else? Okay, number 8. Teresa, are you there?
Yep.
Okay.
God is praised whenever any mind learns to be wholly helpful. This is impossible without being wholly harmless, because the two beliefs must coexist. The truly helpful are invulnerable, because they are not protecting their egos, and so nothing can hurt them. Their helpfulness is their praise of God, and he will return their praise of him because they are like him, and they can rejoice together. God goes out to them and through them, and there is great joy throughout the kingdom. Every mind that is changed adds to this joy with this individual willingness to share in it. The truly helpful are God's miracle workers, whom I direct until we are all united in the joy of the kingdom. I will direct you to wherever you can be truly helpful, and to whoever can follow my guidance through you.
Okay. What is it saying, Teresa?
So our job is to be truly helpful, and Jesus will guide and through us as the Holy Spirit. And there will be great joy. All we have to do is remove our blocks and be willing, right?
Yes. So we have to remember to not split the mind so that the
Right.
mind can be open to receiving the communication from God. So, yes, so you could think of Jesus as a lot of people think of Jesus as a miracle worker, right? And so what he's saying is that Jesus, Jesus is our brother. We are all Jesus. Oh, we are all called to be truly helpful and work miracles because they're God's miracles. They're not our miracles. They're God's miracles because that's the source. Love, the love of God is the source of all miracles. So we are just, we are opening our mind, the channel of communication, so that that can come through. And that will extend the joy of the kingdom. Yeah. Yeah, and it's saying, number 8, I will direct you wherever you can be truly helpful, and to whoever can follow my guidance through you. So it's saying that we can't decide where or who the miracle is to be given to. The Holy Spirit has to guide us in that, because Holy Spirit knows, and Jesus is in charge of the atonement plan. So to be truly helpful means that they will be in a position to follow my guidance, Holy Spirit guidance through you. So it's just like we have people in our life that help us to open up and be more loving. That's what we would be doing with other people. But we don't get to decide like, oh, that person really needs a lot, we can't decide who is ready, to accept and to open their mind and receive, because we don't know. So So we need guidance for that. And number 3, it says the truly helpful are invulnerable. Okay, so a lot of people have the misperception that to be loving is to be vulnerable, right? Yeah. And it's not like that at all. It's the other way around. So, so love is a place of strength because they are not protecting their egos. And so nothing can hurt them. Okay. So so what it's saying here is really when we feel hurt, we're protecting our ego, and that is what is feeling hurt, because that's what is invulnerable. We wouldn't have to protect our ego if it was invulnerable. So we only protect what we perceive to be as vulnerable. So a lot of times it's our feelings, it's our personal individual feelings that we protect. Or let's see, what else do we protect? Well, yeah, we protect our, quote unquote, social image of, whatever the image that we have of being, it could be, being a really tough woman or a tough man or whatever, So we will protect that which can be quote unquote attacked, and nothing real can be attacked. So all we're protecting is illusions that are not real. Okay, so let's see, any questions, anything else there? Oh, there's one more here. This is important. So number 2, the line 2. So to be wholly helpful, it has to be wholly harmless. So it's impossible to be wholly helpful without being wholly harmless. And so that's the belief, that's letting go of the belief that the mind can attack. Okay, the mind cannot attack, but if the mind wants to attack, the ego mind wants to attack, that's why it identifies with the body, okay, because bodies can attack. So then the mind can believe that it can attack because it's actually identifying with the body. And then it believes it is vulnerable to attack. So it has made itself unreal by splitting itself and identifying with objects. Yeah. Okay. And then we feel guilty, okay, because we think we've hurt other people and we've, so and then we hold the guilt, and now we have to project it because it's intolerable. So yeah, so and then by projecting it, we're judging and we're blaming, so we're just accumulating more guilt. So anyway, okay, all right, anything more before we stop here? Okay, so that's the end of chapter 4. So until next time, see you. Bye-bye.